Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and here we break down complex issues around health, the climate crisis, and social justice through a vegan lens. We'll talk about the magic link between your well being and the planet's health because luckily, choosing a healthier, mindful lifestyle for yourself often creates healthier vibes for our planet too. Staying consciously clueless means getting to show up knowing nothing, but staying open to all that you can learn. From feasting on plant-based meals and reducing waste to learning to meditate, every step you take contributes to your wellness and makes systematic change for the world. You can make a difference. This podcast will show you how.
Thanks a lot for having me here.
I connected with you. This is going to make me sound very professional. I connected with you on LinkedIn first and was inspired by the content you were creating there, and then was connected through a mutual contact. So I'm really excited to be chatting with you because I've loved following the work you're doing for a while now.
Thanks so much, Carly. It really means the world to me. Sometimes when one's sharing stuff on LinkedIn, you never know whether it's going anywhere or doing anything. But when you hear somebody that says, yeah, I appreciate it, and they find any value, even if it's really tiny, that makes all the difference. So thanks a lot for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. I mean it. I would love to start with GoodRipple and work from there because that was my introduction into the work you're doing in this world. So let's talk about what that is and we'll go from there.
Yeah, definitely. So GoodRipple is a platform to connect change makers. Think of it like Tinder, but for change makers. That's where we want to be. Our mission is to connect 300 million change makers by
Wow.
2030. So far, we're just above 3,000 members from 102 countries. So as you can tell, we will have to grow exponentially to reach our goals, our mission. But we really want to bring people together, bring change makers together, because right now it's so difficult to connect with other change makers. It's so difficult to find them. How do you know that your neighbor is not trying to change the world? It's
Mm.
very difficult to know these things. And how do you know that there's not other people around you that are trying, that are interested, that maybe need a little push for someone, need a connection to go ahead, some brainstorming or join a movement or something. And we want to really tap into that unleashed power, both at a local and a global level. So right now we have a community. We've started with it's our MVP, our minimum viable product. It's this community, very low tech, very clunky in a way, but we've used it to test our idea of whether are there change makers out there and do they want to connect with each other. And so far, we started 18 months ago, and basically everybody that's joined, there 90% of them are coming from my content on LinkedIn exclusively. And the other 10% is word of mouth, which we're starting to hear from people. Oh, my neighbor told me to join. Oh, my colleague told me this is good. I'll join. And we're starting to hear that. So it's really good, really positive in fact. Yeah. And yeah, that's a little bit what we want to do with GoodRipple.
I love the idea of connecting other people who want to do this work because we know that it takes individual action all the way to this collective change and everything in between. And there, I think, are so many examples right now in the world of showing what a few people collectively starting to gather can do, whether it's the student protesters or everything. So I love the idea of saying, hey, there are more people than you worried about this. So let's push forward together because that collective action is beautiful.
Absolutely, yes. And I think a lot of the times people, change makers, can feel quite isolated because we're trying to change
Mm.
big challenges, right? Whether it's climate change or poverty or inequalities, they're really big challenges. And when we look at them on an individual basis, it's just very overwhelming, right? But suddenly, if you start seeing that you're actually surrounded by these other people who also want to make an impact like you and tackle these challenges, then it starts feeling a little bit easier, right? And you start coming together, you start mobilizing, you start inspiring other people. I think inspiration is a really overlooked thing. We talk about those individual actions, but How about inspiration? You can multiply and amplify your impact if you are inspiring others around you, whether it is
Mm.
your neighbor or inspiring a whole nation or the whole world, like maybe Greta Thunberg or others are doing. But you can still inspire somebody around you to make a positive impact. And I think that's super powerful. We need a lot more of that.
So the language you're using, I've noticed, is changemaker. What is your definition and why that term?
Good question. I don't think it's a perfect term, but it's the closest we've found so far. And for us and for me, change maker is anybody who is trying to make the world a better place or wants to. And I said this the wants to because for me, a change maker is anybody that wants to create the world. Maybe they're not ready yet to take those steps, but they're thinking about it. And a lot of the time, when another change maker comes together and they give them a little push, then they start taking those actions. So to me, even somebody that's considering it is already a change maker. And change maker change, any positive change comes into that
Mm.
term for me. So whether again is sustainability, social impact, poverty, refugees, mental health, diversity and inclusion, anything that makes the world a better place counts in the change making space, at least to me. And something that we've noted is that it's a term that is not super popular in a way. And some people who I think are change makers may not classify themselves as change makers.
Mm.
And that's a little bit of a challenge we have because we want to have a word that includes everyone. And to go even one step ahead of that is that I believe we can create 8 billion change makers in this world because anybody can be a change maker. You don't need any specific background or education or anything. Anybody can be a change maker. So it's about one, helping the change makers that are already or feel already are change makers, but also unleashing the change maker within everybody else. I think that's super important. But we do have challenges with the term because again, some people may not identify themselves as change makers, but they're actually creating positive change. And we just haven't found a better word to describe everybody that's trying to make the world a better place. And I would be super keen to hear if you have any better suggestions, because you can call some people sustainability experts or social impact advocates or climate change campaigners, but then you're making it very specific and leaving some people out. And we're
Right.
all about keeping it super accessible and super inclusive. So far, changemaker is the word that we found that's more accessible and inclusive, but it's not perfect. Happy to hear if you have any other suggestions.
I appreciate the term, and I see how it could be difficult to choose. And maybe it's something that I'm sure evolves as GoodRipple does in terms of what language is a growing amount of people using. Because I think language is changing a lot right now as we learn so much about different levels of oppression and undoing those levels of oppression. So I wonder if that will evolve as GoodRipple does.
Absolutely, yeah. And we're very much open at gathering this feedback from our members. And in fact, in the past, we've been asking people that join us, do you feel you're a change maker? About
Mm.
90% of people say yes, but there's a 10% that say no, but they still join us. And our main thing is join a community of change makers. So they still somehow feel attracted by the term, it seems. But again, it's not perfect. It doesn't really include everyone, and we really want to be as inclusive and accessible as possible. So as you said, whenever we find there's a better term, we will definitely start shifting. Some people, I quite like the term impact, but then
Mm.
followed by what? Are you an impact maker? Maybe that also helps. Or are you an impact advocate? That's also quite broad, right? But then, yeah, again, it's trying to find the best one. But so far, I think changemakers seems to be working. But yeah, we're super happy to keep it flexible and as you said, evolve with it.
I'm interested, and maybe this is just linguistics, but I'm intrigued because it would be based on what GoodRipple sees as change making too, right? Or impact, because that could be in the eye of the beholder. I think this is positive change, but it's actually really damaging. Have you come up against that kind of push and pull at all?
Good question. So far, no. I think I've come across some of that, but not really inside the community, but more like
Mm,
on LinkedIn maybe. I think people who come to GoodRipple, they kind of gravitate towards positive impact, and they
right.
tend to have some sort of consensus of what positive impact means. Is generally around either social impact or sustainability, environmental,
Hmm.
climate impact. So far, we've been lucky that everybody that joins, it seems to be some sort of consensus. But yeah, there's some people outside, and obviously we all can have different perspective on this, that may think that some things bring positive impact. I know if somebody that's working in the fossil fuel industry, they could claim that they're bringing energy,
That's what I was
which is
getting
a
at.
good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which to some degree is true. But then
Mental
we would get into
gymnastic jump through there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's true, right? If they decided to stop all fossil fuel tomorrow, people would go quite unhappy about it, right? Because they couldn't get to work, they couldn't heat their homes. But it's about you need to be really be part of the solution and making the right decisions and yeah, making sure that we can transition away as fast as possible. So yeah, it's there's definitely a thin line between what's positive and maybe not so positive, depending on how people look at it, for sure.
So if people are joining GoodRipple because they are either aspiring or see themselves as change makers, what happens when you're a member then? What is that kind of movement, or how do you then motivate or mobilize people to go from, I think I'm a change maker, to, oh, I'm changing the world?
Yeah. So right now, and because we're still quite early stages, so we've got a few things. We run monthly events, normally 1 or 2 events per month, where we try to bring guest speakers, experts in certain topics to share their insights, share some actionable things. We try to focus on really actionable knowledge.
Mm,
Sometimes we also have breakout rooms where people can connect with each other. So that's one way that we help them get into that stage, getting knowledge and getting that action. And that part of connecting with the breakout rooms, it's also quite powerful. We've seen quite a few collaborations happening after that. So it's positive. Also, we've got tons of resources in our community platform. So things that we've developed over these 18 months. So we've got, for example, a Notion database with 220
mm.
impact and green job boards. We have another database with 60 plus sustainability impact events, another one with speakers to follow, another one with awards that you can apply to. So we've got these resources there, and then some others about how to get inspiration, how to be a bit more thought provocative. And we've got those resources that they can use at any time. And then obviously we have a communications platform. In this case, we're using Slack for now. So when people join, then they join Slack as well, and they can start connecting with each other there. Now, all of that at the moment is quite passive in a way, and it's up to people to go in and connect with others and go to events and this and that. What we're trying to do, part of our strategy now, is to make that process a lot more easier for people, right? Because everybody's super busy. People don't have time to look at 220 job boards. People don't have time to go into Slack and look at 2,000 people or 3,000 and find two or three that are really relevant to them. So we want to create something that really helps people get meaningful connections and meaningful resources very fast, tailored to them. And that's what we're working at the moment, trying to develop that to make it a bit more proactive from our end to help people get really the most value out of GoodRipple. So right now, everything's there, but it's up to people to go and get the value from it. We want to make it proactively getting the value to them.
That's really beautiful. I'm excited to dive in a little bit more. And I feel like there's probably some change makers that are in the Good Ripple community I should be talking to.
Definitely. There are thousands. There are 3,100 that you should be talking to.
I'll be podcasting for the rest of my life, just talking to Good Ripple folks.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they're all amazing, really amazing.
So, where did this passion come from you? Because I can feel it not only in your posts when you talk about something, because your authenticity and your passion are hard to miss, which is, I think, why I was drawn to your content. So, where does that come from for you? Where
Thank
does
you.
this passion for, especially sustainability? Because I know it, you post about social change and a lot of things, but you post a lot about the environment, which is what also drew me in your direction. So, where does that come from for you?
Yeah, really good question. I'm glad that you've noticed that I tend to do more environment these days, so sustainability, climate change. It is funny because for me, everything started with social impact. Everything started with poverty. That's what attracted me to it. And I'll tell you that story in a second. But it's funny how I started with social impact, but then I think once you start caring about something, that makes the world a better place in whichever aspect, whether it's again social impact, sustainability, climate, oceans, biodiversity, diversity and inclusion, mental health, anything that helps people or helps the environment or any other living being, it puts you in a mindset of caring. And that
Mm,
mindset of caring has a huge potential to evolve and caring more because we don't have a limit on how much we can care about. So I find it fascinating of tapping on the overlaps between the different areas. And you care about this, but it's got a little bit of an overlap with this other one. Then you start going into that. Then you start going to that. And suddenly you can end up feeling that you care about everything. And it's not just one thing, but you can do something about everything in whatever capacity you can as an individual and collective, of course. But we have an infinite potential to care about everything around us. And I think that's super beautiful and it's super powerful. Going back to my story, so I was a very different guy 10 years ago. I used to have goals in my life that were just having more expensive and polluting car each decades until retiring with a Ferrari. That was me 10 years ago.
sweet.
Yeah, a very climate friendly guy.
Hey, we all are different
We all
evolutions of
have a
ourselves,
past.
not here to
Uh,
judge.
Exactly. And that was me. I was brought up with not like bad values or anything, but I valued more having money and having a big house and having two sports cars outside and whatever. But I'm from the Canary Islands. I'm from Gran Canaria. I don't know if you picture them in the map, but we're just off the coast of Africa, just off the coast of Western Sahara, south of Morocco. I've got some friends from Western Sahara, which is the country next to us in Africa. And when I finished my studies, my friend from there told me, hey, why don't you come to Western Sahara and stay here with us for some time? And I went and I took a flight, and it's just 30 minutes, literally just 30-minute flight from Gran Canaria to Western Sahara. And when I landed there, I saw a totally different reality. I was used to all of this luxury and all of these opportunities and everything else. And when I got there, I didn't see opportunities. I didn't see a lot of the things that I was used to. I saw a lot of poverty. I saw a lot of pollution. I saw a big lack of opportunities.
Privilege can keep us really blinded in our
Yeah,
own lane. And again, not a judgment, but that is by design, right? That we're like, I don't need to see those other things because I want the car and the money. And
yeah, exactly. And like we've all seen poverty in the media and on TV and stuff. But I think it's quite different when you see it with your own eyes and you look at it with certain perspective. And my friends, because I went there with my friends, they shared their life with me, and I started to learn so much about their values, which I then realized that were better than my values. And I think a lot of people will say, well, you can't compare
mm,
values because it's a personal thing. But to me, I do think they're comparable because their values were about humility, family,
mm,
friendship, love, care. I was like, I've been lost without these values. I've been valuing money and material stuff, even if we know that money doesn't bring us joy, we still don't listen to that and we still pursue the money and material stuff. But suddenly I
capitalism's
opened
got a
my eyes,
stronghold on the mindset
indeed,
of us.
very strong. So thanks to that trip, I realized that everything that I had in my life that until that moment I thought it was because I had put a lot of energy, I had studied hard, I've put all my time and effort, but I was missing something. And it's that I was given the opportunity to do all of that. And those people half an hour away from me did not have that opportunity just because they were born half an hour away from me. And that
Mhm.
blew my mind. And suddenly I realized I have to do something to help these people and everyone in the world. that moment, I developed a responsibility towards making the world a better place. I
Mm.
started becoming super passionate about eradicating poverty. And I started learning a lot about it. I joined Engineers Without Borders UK because I'm an engineer by background. So I
Mm.
joined the charity. I started running a local chapter for the charity, and I started getting super involved with all of these things. And I started running events for the charity and bringing university professors, PhD students to talk about different global issues. And some of them were about renewable energy and sustainability. And that's how I started getting into sustainability and renewable energy and climate change and everything else. Like back then, I didn't care about climate change. Yeah, I had heard about it, but I knew nothing about it and I just didn't care. Yeah, it would be cool to solve it, right? Everything else, but it wasn't my thing. And then since then, it's been now 9 years that I've been on that change making journey where I've been learning more, caring more, developing motivation, starting with very small, tiny actions, and then growing my way to a bit of a higher impact actions that I'm hoping to be doing now. But it's all of that journey, and we're all at different parts of the journey. As you said before, judgment really has no space here because I cannot judge anyone because I've been there. And just because I wasn't given the environment to grow these values, we put blame on people because a lot of the time it's just their environment that defines how we evolve. So I think acknowledging that we're all in a different part of the journey is super important. And if we can help people to move forward in that journey, that's wonderful.
That's so beautiful. And it reminds me of a quote I saw. I'll have to look for it because I saved it, but I don't have the person offhand that said it. At paraphrasing, it was something about this activist who had been an activist for over 30 years and was like, believe me when I tell you, we need the people who took longer to wake up to. Like that, the idea being like, just because someone didn't hear you that first time you shared about this thing, as frustrating as it can be in so many situations, not downplaying that, but the quote was like, if it were easy, we wouldn't be where we are now. It would have worked. We would have gotten more progress. And I've been trying to think of that idea more and more. Not that I'm automatically like, block, you're done, but there can be that frustration that comes up and remembering that I wasn't born, like you said, with the values that I hold now. I just wasn't.
100%, yeah. I think something that I find really interesting as well is so I've met quite a few people that they've had an environment when they were younger that actually nurtured those values. People who had parents that were already climate environment aware, that were already vegetarian, that were already not taking flights.
Mm-hmm.
And now I see them being super advanced in their journey, right? Because they were nurtured with those values, but we don't all get that luck, right? And we all come from different backgrounds, different circumstances. And again, I think it's about understanding where people are and helping them move forward one step at a time, right? Because you cannot just wake up one day without knowing anything about climate change and going tomorrow being an activist and going to protest and changing everything. Like it might happen, but it's very unlikely. So I think if we take people on board on that journey, it's yeah, some people say, but it's that we need urgent action today. And that's true. But the problem is if we don't take people in the journey, they're not even going to step ahead one
Right.
single step. So we're not going to get there either. Yeah, in my opinion, we really need to be bringing everyone on board and helping them move forward in the journey.
It's so interesting the idea you brought up starting in this space of learning about and making social change and how that has been woven into sustainability. There, I think almost every guest I talk to, of course, I'm talking to people that care about this already, right? But there's always this insert point, this entrance into the conversation. And the thing I've noticed is that if whatever it is, poverty, it is the environment, it is animal welfare, it is whatever, if you are open and you're doing that work from a place of authenticity and passion, you're gonna continue to learn because, of course, poverty and environmental disasters are directly linked. Like you said, there's no way to unravel all of these movements and all of these systems. There's just no way to do it. And so I think that it's so beautiful to see how there's so many different paths to get in that door, but if you're open and willing and genuine, it all often leads to this place of hopefully collective liberation.
Absolutely, yeah. Now you're so spot on. And I think it's about finding what people already care about and using that as the door to get them. Because if
Yeah.
somebody doesn't care at all about climate change, trying to go with figures and stats and things to convince them this is very important, you have to take action. Yeah, you might be lucky to convince them, but it's very unlikely that you're going to get them on board. But however, if they care a lot about, I don't know, the river flooding in their community, or they realize that there's not so many birds anymore in their garden, or whatever it is, that's something that really comes home for them, then we need to be building on that. We need to ask them more questions about why does it matter to you and develop that relationship. I think a lot of the things that we're missing is that we've lost that sense of community and we don't develop deep relationships anymore. And
Mm,
to get people on board, we really need to build stronger communities and really build deep relationships, because when you have a deep relationship with someone, they listen to you, right? And then you are a lot more likely to get them on board, mobilize them, inspire them. But if it's somebody that you don't really know much about, it's a lot more difficult to get them on board. So I totally encourage anyone who's listening to go out there and build a strong community, build strong relationships, because that's how you really can bring people along with you in this journey.
that's such a good reminder. And I grew up in a small community. And now living back here as an adult, I, of course, appreciate it more because I'm not a surly teenager, but also seeing, because I've lived in areas that are bigger as well, just in terms of the power of community in general. You start to see it where, oh, we rely on each other here. We actually rely in this small town on each other to get through our tourist season. We rely on each other when something bad happens to someone. We don't want to disappoint or hurt the store owner down the street, so there's maybe less crime. The power of community, of people being
Mm,
around, of people knowing you, of people watching for you, whether it's your town, whether it's a community you make around something you care about. I just continue to be reminded of how powerful that really is.
100%. I think when you have a strong community, then everything falls into place. And I think a lot of our issues is because we've lost that sense of community, right? If you have that strong sense of community, you care about the people around you, you care about the things around you care about the environment around you. Nobody wants to live in a neighborhood with lots of crime and no vegetation and everything is destroyed. You want to take care of things. And when we bring that at a global level, it's you start bringing it outwards and you end up caring for the entire world in a way, right? But you start in your community. And I think we really need to build those strong communities. It's one of the missing pieces of the puzzle.
So, in terms of community, in your words, you were a different guy 10 years ago, and you probably had different community around you then, which can sometimes feel a little sticky as we grow and evolve, and maybe we're in different places. Was that your experience? Were there people in your life that were like, what happened to the dreams of the Ferrari, dude?
Yeah, I still have some friends like that. It's it is tricky. It is definitely tricky
Yeah.
because most of my friends from my childhood, from school, from university, have known my other me, and
Right.
they struggle with my new me, right? Like when I go back, like I think luckily most of my friends from childhood, like they have really good values in terms of friendship and they're
Mm.
really good people. And I think somehow I always surrounded myself with that type of people. So I was lucky in that sense. But yeah, in terms of what we do and how we think, it's so different now. And it's a challenge because sometimes you do struggle maybe to find a conversation that works because it's a little bit tricky. And they also feel that you are like quite distant from them in a way, right? Like they might
Mm.
want to do something together, but you are like, I'm not so much into that anymore. And it definitely poses some challenges. I think it's my key is to try and see the good things in them, and hopefully they see the good things in me, and we keep learning from each other. Like I do learn from them about certain aspects of life, maybe not so much into sustainability and social impact, but I do learn from them. And I like to believe that I'm also helping them to get a little bit more exposure to doing a bit more good in the world. And in my experience, it does work. And you see all the friends that didn't care at all start caring slowly. And
Yeah.
again, it's just that journey, right? They're just at a different stage. I'm at a different stage. Other people are at a different stage. And I see how that happens. I've got friends who don't care about poverty, etc. And after a few years, I've seen them how they now start donating to some charities on an
Mhm.
ongoing basis. They're like, yeah, at least I do my little bit. And it's like, okay, that's a start, right? That's a start. Better than nothing. I remember I have a really good friend, an ex-colleague, that when I was running these events for Engineers Without Borders, I used to be like very on top of him. You have to come to the event. You have to donate here. You have to do this. I'd be like, leave me alone. I don't care about your stuff. Just leave
We've
me
all been
alone.
there in our beginning phases of the world is ending. Why isn't everyone listening to me? It's part of the
Yeah,
journey.
indeed. But the funny thing is that I would be like, yeah, I've organized this event to fundraise for this charity. And he's, but leave me alone. I don't care about fundraising or charities and stuff. And now, 5 or 6 years later, it's him, the one that comes to me saying, look, I'm doing this fundraising for this charity. And I'm like, that's amazing. I really love it. I'm so proud of him. And it's just like getting a little bit of inspiration, getting a little bit of a
Yeah.
seed, right? Like I've had so many people inspiring me to be here where I am today, right? It's not like I just did all of this. It's because other people have been pulling me in this direction, and I've been getting inspiration from them, advice and learning, and that seed eventually continues to grow. So I think, yeah, inspiring others is really powerful.
It's a theme that I think you bring up a lot in, and even when we've chatted here, is it seems like inspiration, whether finding it or inciting it in others, is important to you. Do you think that's an important part of making change?
100%. I think inspiration is such a critical part of it, and it's so overlooked. Like it will, when you look at actions you can do at a local or at an individual or a systemic level, very rarely you're going to see inspiration in there. But then you
Mm,
see the biggest movements and the biggest change, it all comes from inspiration. It comes from people inspiring other people who have a vision and they go and get it done together. So I do believe that we need to be talking more about inspiration, and it should be very explicitly in the list of things you can do to make the world a better place. Is inspire other people, because suddenly it's not about your impact anymore. It's about how you can amplify and multiply that impact by inspiring others. And if you think about it, like most actions we take, we are inspired by someone. Where it's whether we see a post somewhere or we read it
right.
somewhere or we watch a video, it's, oh, somebody's done it. I can do it too. That feeling of somebody's done it, then I can do it too. It's really powerful. And for some reason, we just tend to ignore it all the time. Like it doesn't seem to have any power. I believe it's mostly because it's not measurable. And we have
Mm,
this obsession in our
yeah.
current time that if it's not measurable, if you cannot track it, then forget about it, ignore it, it's useless. And it's no, we need data, we need to measure some things, but just obsessing with measuring stuff is moving our focus away from what really matters as well, that's non-measurable. And we're becoming these machines of all numbers and trackers and things, and we forgot about our instincts, we forgot about our values, and it is sad in a way. And I think, yes, we need to be measuring things, of course. We need to be data-led for many things, but not obsessing it in a way that we just ignore everything else that's not measurable. Because they say what you measure is where you're going to put your energy and your effort into. And if
Mm,
you just put your energy and effort into things that are measurable, you're going to be missing out all the non-measurable things that are probably even more impactful. So I think striking the right balance between the two is really key. And that's also something I'm really passionate about. And I need to be writing more about that. And yeah, just stop measuring stuff, stop obsessing measuring stuff.
yeah, to only focus basically on the quantitative data, to leave out qualitative, to I was a double major in sociology and women's studies. And so
Right.
I would be like, but what about in sociology? I'd be like, what about more qualitative? It was just very interesting. And it actually made me use both. It made me
Mm,
value both because you can't leave out the narrative. Numbers don't tell the narrative. And I think you're so right. The obsession with that leaves out the story piece, which is where the inspiration comes from.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't have put it better.
So if someone's listening to this and they're inspired, which I have no doubt they will be, and they maybe consider themselves a change maker or maybe don't yet, what do you tell someone who's, I want to make change? What do I do?
Good question. What comes to mind is join GoodRipple.
Fair enough, fair
Whatever,
enough.
whether it's GoodRipple or I would say join forces with somebody else. It feels a lot easier when you're trying to change the world with somebody else. It feels quite
Mm,
daunting if you're doing it on your own. So if you're just thinking about change making, how can I make an impact? How can I make a lasting change in the world? Try to team up with somebody. Whether it doesn't matter if they're also like just starting the journey, even better, because then you can move along together. And it becomes a lot easier when we have people around us. And I would suggest trying to find some people locally to you if that's
mm,
available, because there's a special magic when you have somebody local that you can just go to their home and have a tea together or have a meal or go for a walk and talk about these things that matter to you, because the ripple effect of that is unmeasurable, but it's so powerful. And I think having that little support can be really helpful. Now, if you can't find it in your local area, then of course, try to go online. At least you can have Zoom calls or even just chat on WhatsApp or any other platform. But I would really strongly recommend finding somebody around you. And a lot of the time, joining that community is an amazing way of getting more people around you that are in the same journey, in the same boat, trying to achieve a similar mission. And whether that's a local community, an online one, yeah, I would suggest getting into there because it can really boost, it can really help you get that inspiration from others. Because you might think those changes are impossible for you or are too far away from you. But when you see a lot of people around you that are doing them, suddenly it becomes easy and say, I can do
yeah.
that too, because everybody around me is doing it, right? Like we do that all the time, right? We just follow society, whatever society is doing, we tend to do it because everybody around us is doing it. Everybody's working really hard and going burned out, so I'm going to do it too. Everybody's not caring about the environment, so I'm going to do it too. But if you start surrounding yourself with people who care and who are making changes, suddenly you just follow. It's just so easy. It becomes a lot easier. And they'll be there to help you as well. So it's even easier. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Try to get at least one person in your life that also wants to make a change or is already making change. And if you can, join a bigger community, whether it's local or online, and find again something that's really your passion, because that's
Yeah.
what's going to be more sustainable for you. If you are super into eating meat, it's very unlikely that you're going to join a vegan community, right? It's just not for you. So you need to find something that resonates with you, that you can take actions that are sustainable in time for you. So find your passion, whether it's food or transport or energy or the local biodiversity or mental health, whatever it is. Find your passion and get surrounded by people in that passion, because that will help you start growing. Then you can start tapping into overlaps with other passions around. But it's important that you start with something that you feel you're passionate about and that can bring you joy. so that you can keep carry on with those actions and you're not going to feel demotivated.
That's beautiful. And it's really good advice. It makes a huge difference for, I think, all of the things you said, but especially for me, I've noticed for my own mental health and my own sustainability to keep fighting for change, feeling alone is like the fastest way to kill that passion.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And it's a problem of our societies, right? Capitalism has made us very individualistic. It's about, I want to be independent, I want to be self-sufficient, but in a negative way. I don't want to depend on my neighbors or my community. So I'll just get all of these stuff to me.
Yeah,
But
totally.
then we've disconnected from everyone around us. And as you said before, when you depend on other people, but depend on them in a positive way, just knowing that they're there to support you, that's powerful. And you don't need that much stuff then.
Right.
And it's just positive. But yeah, we need to try and change that mindset.
Is there anything else that you want to share with listeners that I haven't given you space to do?
Good question. No, I think we've touched pretty much on everything. Just as a final thing, I would just strongly recommend just take the first step and just see what that first step looks like for you and just take it today. If you wait until tomorrow, you might be distracted by other things. If you're listening to this right now, it's because you
Yes.
have some degree of interest and motivation into doing something better for the world. Just do it today. Even if it's just writing it down in a piece of paper so you see it there and you can commit to it. Even if it's just
Mm,
talking to your partner, your friend, your neighbor, talk it out so they know. And then you have a little bit of an accountability partner. Just take that first step today because the ripple effect of that in your life is huge. And the sooner you start, the sooner we get there. So let's start today.
beautiful. Yes. Thank you so much, Carlos. I really appreciate chatting with you and have no doubts that we will continue to chat.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's been amazing. And I'm super grateful, Carly, for the opportunity to be here. And it's been a really good chat. And I've also learned a lot from your insights. So thanks a lot for sharing and again for hosting me here.
Yay.
And for doing this because you are inspiring people. You are doing these high impact actions, putting all of this content out there to inspire more people. And this is you creating that ripple effect. Now, you cannot measure it, but think about that person who's going to listen to one of your podcast episodes, and that's going to spark something in their mind. And they're going to go and learn more about it and inspire other people. And that person may be the one that ends up ending climate change or ending poverty. And it's thanks to you. Yeah, you're not going to be able to find out, but just be sure that the impact is there, even if we cannot see it.
Thank you, Carlos. And right back at you.
Thank you.
If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode of Consciously Clueless. And for that, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, tag me when you share on social media, or share this episode with others who may be interested in the topic. Any sharing truly means the world to me. Join the community at patreon.com/consciouslycarly for bonus podcast content like smoke sessions with Consciously Cannabis guests, video versions of solo episodes, monthly live calls, one-to-one support, more lifestyle content, mindfulness resources, and more. Until